I am back in the park today studying trees, so I thought I'd do another demo, and this time focus on a pine tree. I'm gonna move pretty quick today. Here's my normal palette that I use here, and today for medium, I'm just gonna use mineral spirits. Most trees, have a general shape, and we might associate pine trees a lot of times with a cone or a pyramid. Let's just start with that. And then from within that, I can look at my subject and I can decide, well, where do I have aberrations, changes from the norm? On a pine tree here, I'm just gonna make some of those adjustments, get some of the big broad groupings here kind of mapped out. It's a busy park. We got some people playing disc golf here. Kind of fun. Okay, now I have my general outline in here. I want to delineate that line between what's in the shadow and what's in the light. You can see in the reference image, basically the stuff over here is in the light. I'm not going to be able to draw that line so easily. So for the inside of the tree here, I'm going to mix ultramarine blue and yellow ochre. And I don't want this to be really dark, not too dark at all. And so I'm just going to scrub in and map in the middle part of this tree here. It's a general color. Every time I go in and I mix some more, I can add a little other, make a little more ochre in some areas and maybe a little ultramarine blue in others. That's fine. Just adds variety, and that's all good. And I'm flicking my brush strokes around because I want it to look organic. And I'm picking a mid-tone here in value. It's not really so dark. It's definitely on the dark side. It's not in the middle of the value scale. It's more toward the dark, but it's way far from, the darkest darks. This is more of a red dark over here, and so when it mixes with the green, you get some really lovely grays. All right. So I'm looking at my subject the whole time. That's why I come out plein air. I want to look at the subject. I want to learn from this, the trees right out here. I can paint what I think a tree looks like, but I can mess that up pretty easy too. So I did my outline. Now in this case, I filled in the dark side pretty quickly. And I didn't draw the line that separates what's in light from what's in shadow. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to mix up my light values. So to that dark mix that I had here, which was yellow ochre, ultramarine blue, I'm going to add some lighter tones here to that mix. My cadmium yellow, medium, a little bit of white, we'll see. The light side of the tree is actually just kind of very dull greenish ochre. So on my palette it looks right, but let's see how it looks in relation to the darks I put down here. Seems a little cool. So I'm going to add a little red into that, add red light, and a little more cadmium yellow. As I come over here, it's 3/4 lit. So some of the light, it's not just right along the outline of a pine tree. It's catching the outlines of individual branch structures here. And that requires a little more study to see where those branches, kind of come out and catch a little more light. And you can simplify this a little bit, for sure. This is a blue spruce pine tree, by the way, so it's got a natural blue tinge to it, but in this light, it's hard to really see that. A lot of light over here. Sometimes it's easy in a tree to get lost. You forget, where was I at in this tree? So just take a minute and kind of locate your what I call landmarks. Like this little branch coming out here is a landmark. Obviously the top's a landmark. I can say, okay, somewhere between here and where this branch comes out, I need to find those on my subject. Where is that at? There it is. Okay, then I start to, put my marks down. The drawing is pretty important for me here. I don't want to generalize. Again, I'm studying the subject. I want to learn from it. All right, so I've got the light and the dark there. Let's pop some sky in and start to work that outside edge of the tree to help define it. That'll work pretty good. I've just used ultramarine blue and a little yellow ochre to knock it back. It's afternoon light here today, so that ochre gives the warm feeling, kind of the dry, arid air that I have here in Colorado this time of year. But I'm going to not touch the tree yet because I don't want to get those greens mixed in there. Sometimes with pine trees, I find I get a nicer edge sometimes, or I replicate that pine needle edge if I push the bristles down into the branches. You can try it both ways, see whatever works for you. So I'm thinking, where am I here? I'm having to find my place back in the tree. And I'm putting a few little sky holes in there, but I'm not going crazy with that. So this takes a little more work than on a deciduous tree. You know, getting these individual little branches here can definitely take a little more work. And while there is repetition in a pine tree, you gotta guard against having a little too much of that. You want some variety. And I'll come back in with my tree color and then paint. That's what I would call the positive shape, is the tree color. And I'll paint back into this in a minute here, once I get my outline kind of set. Now the ragged brush here, see those bristles being kind of splayed out. I can use that to my advantage here by getting these little striated brush strokes in here that kind of replicate how the sky is poking through the tree anyway. I'll go ahead and put in some bright green grass in there too. What the heck? I got to paint that grass that's in shadow there. It looks a little green. Ultramarine blue and cad yellow medium. So let's go back into the tree. I want to do a couple of things. So I want to show some of these branches that are coming toward me in the shadow shape. So I'm going to go back in, make up my shadow color again. But since this is a blue spruce, these branches here are actually showing some, a blue tinge to them. So I'm going to an ultramarine blue, a little transparent oxide red, some cad yellow medium. But I want this mixture to be more toward the blue side. It's a little lighter and it's a little bluer. If you can't find a color, identify a color that you can kind of name in the subject, and then say, this other color here that I can't quite figure out, is it a little lighter or darker? Is it warmer or cooler? And that'll give you a clue on which way you need to bend your mixtures then to get to that color, because it's all relative. So I'm making this a little lighter, a little bluer in here right now. And I've got this nice structure right in here of branches. And what I'm looking for is, pine trees, these branches are growing up. And so within the tree here, there are these branches that are sticking up and growing up, or sticking out and growing up, I should say. That color is lighter and bluer, right? But it's not near as light as anything in the light. It's still in the shadow. And so now I'm going to go in and I'm going to define some of the darker darks in the tree. And they're warm. They're really warm in here. So there's some orange or red. They're more toward the, I've got a mixture of transparent oxide red and ultramarine blue. And so I'm going to go into some of these areas, and it's usually right behind these branches that we just painted in blue. It's usually right behind those you get some of these dark darks that are set back into the tree. So I'm going to try to denote a few of those as accents, basically. Put some of these marks, outside into my sky if there are areas that I went a little too aggressively by cutting in with the sky. So see how that helps to carve out the depths of that tree? This is a step a lot of painters miss, I think. In a pine tree, there are some real dark accents that make the difference. It's really warm right in here. This is also a good place to sneak in some reds to offset all the green. Keep looking at my subject there. Where are those darkest little dark accents? And sometimes they're right at the bottom too. And the ones at the bottom here are really, really dark. Now I'm gonna go dark, but then I might need to cover up some of that so it doesn't look like it's standing out too much. Okay, and then I can go back in with more of the green, the blue-green that I started with, and clean up any other little edges that I want to show in here. There's a couple of pine cones up in there, and so if this is a reference for me back in the studio, I'm going to capture those because that's kind of cool. That's an element of it, of this pine tree. And they're catching the light. The ones that I see are catching the light. And those are really bright, so let me put a couple that maybe appear to be in shadow. Probably hard for you to see on a video there. Anyway, that'll remind me back in the studio that, hey, yeah, there was some pine cones up in there, and they, are part of the plant. So I'm gonna go in and look for any highlights I might want to put in real quick in the light side. So there's a few little branches here that are really catching some light. And I will just touch on a couple of those. Okay, that's it for the demo today. Thanks for joining me. I hope that was useful to you. And if you have any questions for me, just leave them in the comments. I try to respond to everybody. Thanks for being here. Bye-bye.